I'm Anna.
I'm Ben.
We're AutoSave. Welcome to our channel.
Today we're watching Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Season 1, Episode 6. Last episode, we had an altercation with Scar, causing us to take immense damage, which hopefully needs to be fixed by a certain Winry.
Yes, definitely. I think that by the end of last episode, we were both like, Winry.
I don't know why, because we haven't had that much of Winry, but I love Winry.
I think it's the concept and idea of this girl that they grew up with when they were children, that they were friends with, that's grandma, I'm guessing it's grandma, housed them, and then she has kind of grown up to be this gearhead, this one. Maybe we like characters, specifically female characters that work on building things.
I don't know. It's like she was there before any of the incident happened with trying to bring their mother back.
True.
And that's
she is like
big portion of it for me. She knows them from a different perspective.
Right, that is fair. I mean, that's bonus points to this character. More reason why we would want to spend more time with them. Because if we're viewing this show, we want to know Al and Ed to the best of our ability. And what's better than someone that's known them basically their whole lives.
You wonder if part of Winry's motivation in the field that she's in is to support them to get their bodies back. And that is what I hope we kind of lean into this episode. But whatever we get, I'm sure I will love. You ready?
Yes.
Sweet.
And now we know you can stop in the middle of the process.
I bet there are a lot of really cool Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood tattoos.
Probably. I feel like this show embodies the type of show that if you watched it when you were younger, it would have become a part of your personality. Like, it would have been integral to the making of you as a person. In the same way that I would view a show like Cardcaptor Sakura, Hunter x Hunter, Naruto, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dragon Ball.
I know it's just held in such high regard in terms of quality and as the stories start to finish, but I didn't think it would be this compelling this early on. We're only 6 episodes in.
I think out of characters that have recently been introduced or have been introduced that haven't had a lot of time spent, Envy is the one that I am most excited to have more time with.
Does Envy have a real body, or...
I feel like the form we see at the end with Envy and that's in the OP is the actual form of Envy. I like that we give credit to Mustang even though it was raining. And some characters here learned the truth about Al.
Cool train. Hughes!
That's Dad.
Aww. Armstrong's accompanying us.
He's the uncle.
Where's Al?
In like cargo?
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. That's so cute.
Bye, Hughes. He's probably crying. Great song.
You know, the idea that we need to be protected or strengthen numbers.
Oh no.
Fleeing because of... He went missing! Oh, that's why he ran.
Interesting.
So this is a detour.
Yeah, I didn't expect it.
She's holding Al.
For real?
I could have guessed it.
Tomorrow.
He changed his name.
Wow. How would you be curing people with alchemy? Would you have to take something? Ah! Oh my god, we're just throwing Hal?
噂では姿を消す際に極秘資料を持ち出されたとか。
Mm.
これからの命令とはいえ、あんなものの研究に手を染めてしまった。
That thing.
あんなもの？
私のしたことは、この命をもってしても償いきれるものではない。あなたが研究を命じられたものとは一体賢者の石だ。
Shit.
私が持ち出したのはその研究資料と石そのものだ。
And the stone itself.
ここに。
No. No. It's one of the fake ones. Nope.
石ってそれ液体じゃん。
Does it turn hard when it touches air?
What the fuck?
What the fuck?
大エリクシル、赤きティンクトゥラ、
All of the different like names for it.
賢者の石にいくつもの呼び名があるよう。その形状は石であるとは限らないようだ。だがこれは不完全品だ。い
Incomplete
つ限界
product.
が来て使用不能になるかわからん。
ヨールのエセ教師もそうだ。不完全品とはいえ、奴の能力は確実に底上げされていた。
So do you use little drops of
ど
it
れだけ
then?
のものを作り出せるってことは、研究次第では完全品も夢じゃない。ベコさん、俺にその研究資料を見せてくれ。
こんな子供が。あの内乱の後、人間兵器であることに耐えられず、資格を返上した術師が何人いたことか。
Jesus.
バカな真似だってことは分かってる。それでも目的を果たすまでは針のむしろだろうが座り続けなきゃいけないんだ。
Oh.
特定人物の魂の錬成を成し遂げるとは。
Even the wordage of
完全な
specific
賢者の石
person.
を作り出すことができるか
Just
も。
might be able to produce a complete.
資料を見せることはできん。
そんな。
He took them for a reason.
あれは悪魔の研究だ。
The devil's
知れば地
research.
獄を見ることになる。
It's already been through hell.
帰ってくれ。
How through researching you realize such horrifics, you know?
What worries me is that they found him, and then what if someone else finds him? Like, knowing what he has now, I'm scared that someone else is gonna find him now.
この町の人たちの大切な支えを奪ってまで元の体に戻りたくはないよ。
賢者の石が作れるんだって分かっただけでも収穫だ。
Yeah.
また別の方法を探すさ。こういう少佐は良かったのか。
Now he knows that there's ability to create
セント
it.
ラルに報告しなくてさ。
And what its form actually looks like.
我が輩が今日会ったのはマウロというただの町。
God, Armstrong's such a good man.
Armstrong! They're both on the same page.
資料が隠してある場所だ。真実を知っても後悔しないというなら。
Learning the truth.
君ならば真実の奥のさらなる真実。
Finding the truth within the truth.
これは
I've said too much. Oh my god.
Truth within.
君たちが元の体に戻れる日が来るのを祈っておるよ。
See, this is just like, what is the difference in morality of those that stayed state alchemists, and those that left, you know?
国立中央図書館第一文化。
なるほど。木を隠すには森か。
Makes a lot of
あ
sense.
そこの蔵書量は半端ではないからな。
That's back at Central, right?
ここに石の手がかりがある。
He's going to die. Or something. Someone's...
探したわよ、マルコ。
Damn it.
Fullmetal Alchemist.
Thank goodness he gave that to Ed.
Fullmetal Alchemist.
God, Winry's so cool. Change our channel name to AutoMail.
ウェンディお得意さんが来たよ。
Regular customer.
よう、ばっちゃん。
ただいま。
ピナコロックベルだよ。し
Pinako.
かししばらく見ないうちにエドは小さくなったね。こういう場合普通大きくなったね。
They know him so well.
大きくなってりゃそういう。
I would have said it.
メンテナンスに来るときは先に電話入れろって言ったでしょ。
That's so fair.
てめえ殺す気か。
おかえり。
She's so happy. Now she's not.
おー、悪い悪い、ぶっ壊れた。
って何？あるも壊れちゃってるわけ？あんたら一体どんな生活してんのよ。
T.
ったく心配ばっかか けて。
She's amazing.
なるほど。
Outfit, everything.
その資料とやらを手に入れるために一日も早くセントラルに行きたいってのか。腕だけじゃなく足も調整が必要だね。
あら、一応身長は伸びたのね。
うるせえ。足はさておき、腕は一から作らにゃならんね。
How long will that take?
3日だ。
3 days.
と
Awesome.
りあえずはスペアで我慢しとくれ。悪いな、無理って。
一日も早くセントラルに行きたいんでしょ。だったら無理してやろうじゃない。
Oh,
その代わり
For you.
特急料金がっぽりもらうからね。
Again with
the
Al's
animals.
just hanging out with the farm animals.
ああ、すまないね。ああ。母親の墓参りだとさ。
Aw.
What a good
Do you
doggy.
think his teacher's still around?
少佐、
That's where all
あ
the
の子ら
sheep
どんな
were
生活
going.
をしてるのかね。
なーに、大丈夫です。あの兄弟は強い。
強いかい？だといいんだけど。
You know what they're saying.
き
Oh,
なこ殿にとって二人は孫みたいなものですか。
あの子らの父親とは昔からのの
Interesting.
from long ago.
やつめ、妻も子供も置いて村を出て行っちまった。今じゃ生きてるのかどうかもわからん。
Don't even know if he's alive.
Up and left.
そういえば、
Covering his
ウィン
face
ディ殿のご両親は。
死んだよ。イシュバールのないだ
Oh.
ろう。せがれはあの子の両親が外科医だ。
Surgeons. We got that idea that all the
医
doctors
者
were
が足り
called
な
to
い
the
ってんで
war.
戦地に赴いた。
Yup.
ひどい戦いでし
The
た。
idea that they
まった
were
くだよ。
surgeons to like flesh and she's like a surgeon to automail.
彼らの家は
ないよ。あの子らには帰る家がない。エドが国家資格を取って旅立つって日に自分の家を焼き払っちゃ
Wow.
う。帰る家をなくすことで後戻りできんようにしたんだろうよ。
I got chills.
ただい
He's heard your life
母
story.
親を生き返らせようとした無垢な愛。己の命を捨てる覚悟で弟の魂を入れるスバッと成功を燃やして退路を断つ。
The respect.
決意めて我が抱擁
Please. Winry's still working.
やってるやってる。朝からご苦労さん。
徹夜よ。
She said she would be pulling all nighters.
夜遅くまでご苦労さん。この分だともう終わっちゃう。
今日も徹夜よ。
な
Is he getting lonely? He's bored.
セントラルに賢者の石の秘密があるかと思うとどうにも落ち着かなくてさ。
Look at the dog mimicking him.
お待たせ。できたわよ。
いいかい？
2の
3。
Ooh.
毎度この神経つなぐ
The
瞬間
nerves
The nerves
connect.
connect.
まあ賢者の石が手に入ればこの痛みともおそろばだ。残念だね。せっかくの金づるが。
無理して元に戻ることないわ。今回はクロームの比率を高くして錆びにくくしてみたの。その
Nice.
代わり強度が下がったからあんまり無茶は聞きなさいよ。お待たせ。
すぐ治るのか。
ああ、ちょっとコツがいるけどね。背中の内側にあるこの印があるの魂と鎧との仲立ちになってるから、これを崩さないよう。
That's scary.
You have to be sure
That
not to
is
ruin
so
it, yeah.
scary.
またここも静かになるね。
いよいよだね。
セントラルでマルコさんの資料を手に入れる。明日の朝
I wonder if they will hear about like a possible death.
またお腹出して寝てるよ。しょうがないな。
まるで保護者だね、あるわ。
手間のかかる兄を持つと苦労するよ。僕が14で兄さんが15。
私と同い年でこんなちっちゃいくせに人間兵器だなんて。
If he could hear
ちゃうよ
you.
ね。
本当の家族みたいに迎えてくれるばっちゃんとウィンリーには感謝してる。
Real family.
口に出さないけど兄さんもそう思ってるんだよ。
ある。
分かってるよ、んなこた。いちいち言わんでも分かってる。
じゃん、ウィンリー。ありがとう。
I love that he doesn't want to intrude either. That's so
そ
him.
んなとな、ちゃん。ああ、
あれ、ウィンリーは？
徹夜
Does she not like
続きだったからね。起こしてくるかい？ああ、いいよいいよ。そうだ、坊主ども。たまには飯でも食いに帰ってきな。
Or send letters.
ある。
Oh.
いってらっしゃい。
おい。
Soft spot. What a nice note to end the episode off with.
Okay, that was Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood Season 1, Episode 6. God damn it, Marco's dead.
I don't know
Sure.
why I did it this way. Like, this is... Oh, maybe because I just, like, subconsciously wanted to give a thumbs up to the camera. But yeah. What were you
Surely,
saying?
Marco's dead.
Yeah. Okay, well... So, he handed over that piece of paper, which basically, like, tells us... Obviously, he told us that he doesn't even have his materials on him. So, if you're thinking in the mind of a villain... If you're just getting in there a little bit, what is their reaction when they find out that you don't physically possess what they're looking for? They're probably going to torture you until you give that same location that was on the note and then kill you. That's probably what they're going to do.
I wonder... We've seen them interact, like, lust, envy, and gluttony interact with, like, the priest. But... we also know that Marco was a state alchemist, so I imagine that he isn't just gonna, like, fall over, but at the same
he's
time...
not a fighter.
Yeah.
Like, imagine I forgot his name because I hate him so much. The sewing life, Tucker.
Yeah.
I hate him so much that I forgot his name already. Like, I've wiped him. I remember Nina's name and
Yeah.
Alexander, because they're the important pieces of that puzzle. But Tucker, he didn't seem like the fighting type, you know what I mean? So it seems like state alchemists are both, like, you have the fighting ones and then you have the research-minded ones.
Yeah.
It seems like. So I would say this man seems like if his alchemy is all about, like, healing illnesses and doctoring, I think that you could think of ways to spin how he could attack with the idea of how you can cure, but he doesn't really scream, like, human weapon to me, other than human weapon with, like, creating mass destruction human weapons.
Yeah.
By researching them.
I wanted to reread what he was saying. Like, the Philosopher's Stone is called by many names. They're touching it. Its form is not necessarily that of a stone.
Which I love.
However, this is an incomplete product. There's no telling when it will reach its limit and become unusable. Even so, it demonstrated plenty of force during the Civil War.
So we used it. We're getting some piece of information and lore here that I am surprised by.
Yeah, that it was used.
That it was used. I almost felt like up until now that it was such a mythical, like, does it even actually exist type thing. But the fact that we were able to work on studying and almost, like, producing something incomplete but so similar in the same way that the villain characters are, it's incomplete, but they're also trying to produce that same power of a Philosopher's Stone.
You know, I think we have to, like, try to deconstruct where our information has come from.
Interesting. Okay.
Where, like, our idea of the Philosopher's Stone originated with, like, us learning about it through the books and through Edward and Al. And that is inherently, like, the mysticism behind it, the lore behind it, the legend behind it.
Also, those books could have been older.
Yeah. I think that it's fascinating. Before this episode, I was thinking that whatever was being created, these fake Philosopher's Stones by, you know, lust in them, were more of, like, trying to achieve what the Philosopher's Stone is. or like could be, or just knockoffs of it. But coming out of this episode with Dr. Marco, like we're learning about it through people who have researched it right now. And we don't get a lot from Dr. Marco. We get the idea of what it was used for, and like 10 and a half minutes into the episode when we're given the note, he says, knowing you, you'll be able to find the truth within the truth. No, I've said too much. I feel like these aren't just cheap knockoffs of the Philosopher's Stone, but attempts at making the most powerful. Like, I think the Philosopher's Stone is halfway there from what we're seeing this episode. Like, it's the same like the same process that we're using to make these is the same process to make the actual Philosopher's Stone.
Like, before this episode, I had this idea almost that the Philosopher's Stone was a natural occurrence to this world. Like, you go into a cave and you dig far enough down and you find it, this treasure of an actual, like, gem or stone that was naturally formed. But it seems now that it's a recipe. It is maybe an alchemy creation. But what that, then now that we're kind of getting information in that direction in this episode, it leads me to ask, well, what does it take to create it? Because we know equivalent exchange. We know the taboo of the transmutation with the bodies. And we also know what this man, Dr. Marco, holds in terms of his doings with the Ishvalan Civil War, all of the people that got hurt through his research and what he was having to work on, that thing. It makes you think that you might be needing to use the truth within the truth. Like, is it going to be worth it for Ed and Al to create this thing once they know what it'll take to make it?
Yeah, like, do we not get a line from Dr. Marco that's about, like, it's not, like, I'm paraphrasing in terms of, like, penance, but, like... Atonement, right? Like, that idea goes hand in hand with what I think you're saying. I'm wondering if, and how he talks about it, the truth within the truth, and what did it directly come from? When we get Edward saying that he's seen hell, in my mind, that's seeing the embodiment of him attempting to bring his mother back and that figure crawling towards him. I'm thinking that what Dr. Marco is implying, or like about the stone, this show could go one of two ways, like in terms of how we've learned about alchemy so far. One, there could be it could stay in the laws of the universe that we've been given, or two, it could stay in the laws of the universe we've been given, but there exists like this holy grail that is a Philosopher's Stone that doesn't abide by the same laws or has achieved a different,
which
like...
I previously thought.
Yeah. And going through the first thought, if that's the case and it just abides by the laws that we've already learned, I would think the only way to be able to make these things, heal these people with no quote-unquote consequence, or have the priest achieve all these like magical feats out of thin air, would be at the cost of something great, i.e. like a Pokeball filled with humans that you're charging up.
Right, like the whole kind of thought process by watching the priest and his actions was there was no alchemy happening at the time that his miracles were happening, and I think that's because the alchemy happened upon the creation of this elixir, this stone. Therefore, no showiness has to happen, no action has to happen other than, I guess, intention toward what you're going to use it for.
Yeah.
I think that it's probably really purposeful that right after we get the lines of dialogue kind of about what this doctor went through, why he chose to take this material and run, Ed restates his kind of moral code, and that is that he and Al are not wanting to hurt other people in order to achieve what they want to achieve.
See,
like he's not going to take a doctor away from a town that needs a doctor.
That's what it was. Like, because before the line came, I was wondering if they were going to say they weren't going to do it because they weren't going to hurt somebody like that, you know? But they said what you had just said, and they weren't going to stop somebody from like providing this town so much. Just to solidify our thought of what the Philosopher's Stone could be, in the intro, we get what looks like the Philosopher's Stone, zoom
like
in on it, and then there's fire and
there's
multiple people.
yeah.
So what would Ed and Al, if that is what it takes to create it, would they go through it to get what they want? And if they did, would they do it by using specifically bad, evil people?
I feel like there would have to be, with where I'm currently going with the theory, is there would be a moment where Ed and Al would be like, there has to be another way. Let's find another way to create this. Because ultimately, in this theory that I'm feeling very strongly about, it is that it would not fit within Ed and Al's current moral compass to do a killing of people and sacrificial alchemy in order to create this for their own bodies.
Yeah.
And I feel like what we're leading to with all of the evidence, we also, before the line about not wanting to take the doctor away from the town, when Ed is really emphatically talking about his, just vehemently really to the doctor of like, I'm willing to go through hell to do this. We continuously get the line from other characters, other adult characters, that these boys have been through hell. And then in this episode, we also get an emphasis of how young they are from the perspective of another teenager being like, wow, the fact that they're also the same age as me and they're doing all these things. And the grandma's like, what are these boys going through?
Yeah.
And I think that something that's happening in this episode is we're being showcased a little bit more, this highlight of the youthfulness of Ed and Al, in terms of maybe an innocence to their minds that still exists, which takes me to the conversation outside of Tucker's house with Roy, where he brings up to them, if you're going to be traveling down this path, you're going to be seeing more state alchemists and people that are doing things like Tucker. And what is like Tucker? Using people to create this elixir of power.
The devil's research.
The devil's research. And I could see that being the case, that these boys are on this hunt for this power, that they, and not knowing exactly what you'd have to risk or what you'd have to sacrifice to get it, and then ultimately wanting to find another way to go about it.
Okay, two things. One, we are theorizing that this is how you make a stone. They aren't. If they had a stone in their hands right now and weren't the ones to create it, they probably would use it because they don't know what it was. But we get the emphasis that Edward is the one going to be creating it. The idea that he'd create the perfect one, right? A complete one.
That is what the doctor says, is that he believes that because at Ed's young age, he even uses the wordage of specific soul to the armor. Because of what Ed's already been able to do, this doctor believes that Ed would be able to successfully create the stone.
Okay, and then that brings me to, when I was first laying out like the one of two options we could go, and thought of, okay, what if something exists within this world that is outside that belief, or like outside of like the one-for-one nature of alchemy? Does completing a Philosopher's Stone imply that if done correctly, it does supersede that limit? Like, could we, like, if
it would create, having a complete would break the boundaries that are created by the laws of
let's say
alchemy?
If Dr. Marco took 100 lives to create the Philosopher's Stone, if that's how it's made, and then you could use that for 100 miracles or whatever, and once that's done, it's gone. If you created a perfect Philosopher's Stone out of 100 lives, then you could use it an infinite amount of time.
Would it literally make the impossible possible?
Yeah.
Right. Good questions. Something else to bring up in terms of the creation of these fakes is with the villains that are named after sins, you know, we haven't seen them killing, you know, sacrificing in order to create these stones. we have seen them purposefully give the stones to people that are going to try to use them to wreak havoc. And specifically with the priest, they were trying to give it to someone who was maybe going to amass a following, maybe to gather a lot of people who would then sacrifice themselves in some cult-like mass suicide or something. Maybe that was an end goal for them. But it is interesting because what I'm opening up here is it the lives of the people directly? Is it consciousness and the desire of the people to be a part of it?
Exactly.
The following aspect, or is it the physical being? Is it the soul? Is it the fact that they're following
What
you?
does equivalent exchange mean? Like if you
The belief is belief powering that?
Or like what if you took somebody who was a grade A alchemist who could do great things? Like we had like talk about if like that Edward could be a good sacrifice because of what he's capable of. Would his weight as a sacrifice equate to 50 normal people who are just believers, you know?
Yeah, I wonder, and it seems like what's interesting is we have villains that are working very opposite of each other at the same time. Like Scar is doing work that the Sins would not want him to do.
Yeah.
They don't want Ed killed. They want him for their own means, but they wouldn't want Scar to kill him here, which could lead to some of my favorite things that happen in anime is a moment where a villain character fights another villain character for whatever their personal reasons are to protect the protagonist. Like that's always super fun and compelling to have happen. I could see something like that happening just with what's already being created in the story. That could be fun.
I could agree with that. What do you think of what we got about their father?
Oh yeah, the drinking buddy, that idea that don't even know if he's alive. We get his face. It's kind of silly that we cover his face in these pictures, but we get what I assume is his face in the OP, which maybe it's anime. Not.
Like if this derived from a manga, you don't have that, you know.
Then maybe you didn't give a face to him until later within the drawn medium. Yeah. Gotcha.
But it's interesting because they look like we've seen him before in like a flashback, but it's just so fascinating. Like
honestly, I think maybe the focus of this shouldn't necessarily be that we're blocking his face from the viewer, but maybe that it is Pinako's choice to cover his face.
Yeah.
Because that is not who she thinks of as her family. She thinks of almost this as like a daughter and grandchildren.
And if we're going real deep with it, I believe above that is a picture of after Edward already lost his arm or leg, and it could be covering with that as a sort of you're to blame for this.
If you had been here, then they wouldn't have done this. Or if they had done it, they would have been successful. Possibly that idea. Honestly, I like the idea that this is purposeful for the point of talking more on the emotions of who placed these photos here and not for the viewer to not be able to see his face.
I agree
like
with
that.
you.
I'm gonna wave just so we can make sure we show that when we were talking about it.
Man, if I was not scared enough for Al's life before this episode started.
Oh, we've been wondering about this. We have been theorizing. I think it might have been after last episode. That we were like, what happens if the armor gets destroyed?
The seal on the inside of his back is the medium between Al's soul and the armor. So I have to be sure not to ruin it.
And it was with, like, blood.
I know.
That can be scrubbed, washed, some sort of chemical can be poured on it that could have this come off. And
no wonder it's, like, such a tightly kept secret for not only, like, the obvious, but like if you know, the more you know, the more his life's at risk.
But now we also know it makes a lot more sense almost, I feel like, in hindsight, if we rewatched how Ed reacts to Al in fights. Like it always seemed like both of them were as worried about each other's lives, where as a viewer I was like, Ed, I think you need to worry a little more about your life because you're a human within a flesh body. But now it makes way more sense why Ed would have that same urgency and that same fear toward the physical being of Al, even if it's a suit of armor, because of the fact that I have to be sure not to ruin this. Maybe it's because Ed doesn't know what would happen if it got destroyed. Maybe there's a unknowing quality to it. Maybe he does know for sure that if this got removed, that he wouldn't be able to necessarily find Al's soul again, especially with the wordage from Dr. Marco of specific soul. Is it because in that moment in time, the soul of Al was still within that room that he was able to link it? Is it because of connection? Like, how is it that we're able to retrieve a specific soul and put it into this armor? If Ed's done it before, you would assume he could do it again, but is there something, an intricacy to how you actually obtain a specific one?
God damn. It's so, like, I can so vividly imagine so many different scenarios of this getting, like, scratched, wiped off, washed out, that would kill me.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea that I at least put it out there. Like, maybe this is just Ed's fear of the unknown of what would happen. Like, maybe no one knows for sure what would happen, because this is just impressive in general that he was able to put a soul into the suit of armor, and no one's really seen it before, to the fact that in last episode we get multiple state alchemists being surprised by the fact that there's not actually a person in there. Something else, we find out a little more about Winry's
I love Winry
family
so much.
I like that I remember when we first, I remember, it just happened. When we started this episode off, I was like, we're doing a detour? Really? Like, I wanted to go to Winry. I thought we were going to Winry. And obviously the detour ended up being really fruitful, but it was also not only fruitful, it was a good segue with the fact that the reason that Dr. Marco was able to find a home in that city was because all the doctors had been called to the war. And Winry's parents were surgeons, and they were called to the war, and they died.
Yeah. I love her, like, adoration and love for what she's doing. I love that she adores Ed and Al. I, more than anything, though, think that I didn't really expect her to have such a backstory that would make sense with the little lore about the war that we already know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little more tragic.
Definitely. Something that we kind of get in this episode that probably shouldn't have surprised me, but it still did a little bit, was the idea that this auto mail connects to the nerves.
Yeah.
Like, it physically hurts Ed to have the auto mail attached back to his body. And I'm like, well, no wonder he can transmute, like, with it. If it's literally connected to him, like, you could think that that would be prohibiting, alchemy. Like, he claps his hands together. With the idea that the nerves are literally connected to the chrome, it does really read that, of course, it'd be like he has two whole hands that he'd be able to do his alchemy with.
One last thing that I have, and it's going back to the Dr. Marco conversation. When we're talking about his materials, we're given the note of the National Central Library, and, like, on one hand, there's an emphasis on the specificity of his research materials and how he's gone about hiding them in, like, the best place possible.
In a forest.
Right, like putting a tree in a forest. If it is what we think it is, do you think that there is specific research that he has found that had been written or discovered by somebody that plain as day says human lives are needed to be able to make a Philosopher's Stone? Or is it the repetition of reading the same fucking thing of it needs to be an equivalent exchange, and just the confirmation of that through so many materials would be the truth within that truth, would be the inevitability of realization that, that's what it would take.
Through experimentation, through so many attempts with using different things. You could even go with the fact that Tucker was doing his research on animals, because he even brings up the idea that, like, experimenting on animals, like, it's more sanctioned, it's more allowed. So you could even go with, like, maybe with that research, they were trying to do it and create it with other things, with non-humans, and then eventually it led to the fact that they were like, it's not working out, we're not getting complete.
Yeah.
And they kind of piece things together, but they're not necessarily willing to then try that next step to confirm their theory or hypothesis.
I'm less suspicious of their father being connected to anything regarding the Philosopher's Stone now than I was before. You know, like, I'm not saying that we won't meet him or see him along the way. Hell, he could have something to do with the research materials in the library, but it feels like he left and there wasn't anything wrong with to what we can see causing him to leave or a need for him to leave. Did he just fucking leave?
Yeah. I'm wondering timing. Yeah, I do. I want to know exactly why he left.
We know he's an alchemist, but why would we don't know why he would need a Philosopher's Stone.
We know he's an alcoholic.
Both. But we don't, it's not like we've been given a reason of why he would have been needing something more powerful.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
That's all I have.
We're going back to Central. We're gonna have dinner with Hughes again.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hope to see you next time.